How do our brains process words? Let's start off with using a word such as music. At first, the image of this word goes to the right side of our brain. The right side of our brain then sends that image to the left side, which interprets it. And from that point, we can do whatever with it. We can speak it, we can think it, but now we know what these weird symbols that are grouped together mean. But what does that really have to do with music education? Whenever a musician is reading their notes, they have an identical process. They see the notes, and the image of the notes are sent to the right side of their brain, and then the right side sends it to the left, and they can do the same thing. They can speak it, they can think it, but most importantly, when it comes to musicians, they can play it. Just like each letter has its own sound, each note also has its own sound. For example, an E on the piano sounds like this, and an F on the piano sounds like this. Each of these letters has their own key on the piano, which their letter corresponds to. So while a musician is reading their music, they're also making sure that that information is transferred to their hands, and their hands are playing the correct notes. Since these processes are so similar, music has been determined to be a good way for students to practice reading, especially when it comes to students with learning disabilities who have more trouble reading. It could be a more fun way for them to get their reading comprehension skills in. Now, how can music education help when it comes to mathematics? Before we get started with this next part, let me explain to you what a bar is. In sheet music, a bar is where those two vertical lines start and end. From start to finish, that is one bar. At the beginning of every piece of music, there is a time signature. This time signature shows how many beats are in one of those bars. So, in this example, which is the most common example, there are 4 beats in each bar. So, there can be 4 notes in one bar, there can be 3 notes in one bar, there can be 2, and there can be 1. So in the case of 4, each note has to be equally spaced and played for the same amount of time. In the case that there's 3 notes in one bar, each note has to be played for the amount that their note stands for. So if there's a note that needs 2 beats, the player has to make sure that there are 2 equal notes that play 1 beat, and the second one plays 2 beats. This all sounds very confusing, but it can be very helpful when it comes to practicing proportions and that aspect of math. Counting correctly is a very crucial part when it comes to playing music. If the timing is incorrect, the whole piece can sound off completely. So, it is very important that when a musician is learning music, they learn how to count properly and space out their notes. If we think back to bars and time signatures, we can think of the time signature 4 as more of, instead of 4 beats in a bar, it can be each beat is 25% of that bar. So, if a note needs 2 beats, instead of thinking about that, a student would think, oh, so the note needs 50% of the bar. So, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, it would go 1, 2, 3, 4. While I showed 2 very important benefits that music education can have, there are still so many more, and they can be dependent on child to child. So, music education is something that should be implemented in schools and not overlooked because it can have so many benefits and create a better future for every child.